and look to see what you have with Hagerty.
Let's say you heard Rob talk about his car and he said, well, he thought his car was worth, I don't know, let's say 40,000, but I did $10,000 worth of work on it over the years. So to me, it's worth 50,000 because that's what it would cost for me to replace that. How does that work with Hagerty's valuation? How do they determine how much they're going to let you insure your car for? You know, I can't insure my Healy for $2 million and then burn it, can I?
No, that'll never get through my, well, first of all, I wouldn't let it go through, and then the underwriter wouldn't either. I ask a lot of nosy questions about value. I mean, basically the value is, you know, what you could, I'll ask somebody, well, if I'm at a car show, what would you sell me that car for right now? You know, people put, are you talking about modifications? Are you talking about just general repairs to bring it up to
Well, I'll make it easy. I'll make it hard for you. Let's do both. Let's talk about some of the
he did enhancements to his car. You know, the differential, the stainless steel exhaust, the flywheel, all those are nice enhancements that he did to his car.
Those are not considered. Hagerty doesn't define those types of things that you just described to me as modifications. So if that added value to the car beyond what I was showing you, the tools that they use, then I have to have a discussion with my underwriter about that. And usually it's a pretty easy conversation to have. If the owner has documentation that they've put, you know, certain types of things into the car and has added $20,000 of value to the car, that's probably something that we're going to be able to get underwritten, because there's a continuum. There's a continuum of pricing in these cars. From, I mean, on this car that I just valued here, that the pricing on that from a concourse down to a driver was from 18.5 on a driver up to 96,000 on a concourse vehicle. So they're going to work within that range, but I just need to have for my underwriter some documentation, either in terms of pictures or, you know, a build sheet of some sort, or just plain old receipts that you've put this money into the car.
Now, you mentioned talking to the insured and talking to the underwriter. What's the difference between me going through your agency or me just going online to Hagerty and say, you know, I've got what I have, insure me? Why should I go through you instead of through Hagerty?
That's a great question. First of all, I want to let everybody know that there is absolutely no difference in price whether you go direct or use an agent. If you're using a local agent like myself, you're supporting a fellow Massachusetts business. We also have developed quite a bit of expertise in the classic car field. Everybody in my office speaks fluent classic car language. They could be doing this Zoom meeting tonight as well as I'm doing it. So I guess it's a matter of preference. Some people prefer to, you know, do things directly. Some people prefer to work with a local agent. I think we add a lot of value to the equation. We are able to translate things to the underwriter in a way that will allow a policy to get underwritten, where I've had many people come up to me at car shows and say, here's my car. I tried to get Hagerty to write this and they wouldn't do it. And I was like, well, what? I'm looking at the car and I'm like, well, what's the problem? What happened? And they would explain something. And I said, well, you really needed to frame it this way. And we do that all the time with clients. You know, sometimes it's a gray area that you're dealing with, and we know how to color it so that the underwriter is going to say, yeah, I think that's a good risk. We're going to go ahead and issue a policy for that person. And that's how it's played in the insurance business. You know,
Okay. Can I insure my car if it's under restoration? I've got let's say I have a $8,000 Healy that needs $40,000 worth of work. So I want to keep it in my garage, and you know, in case the garage burns down or something within there, can I get insurance for that car while it's under restoration?
it depends. It depends on if it's an active restoration or not. I've run into people, I'm restoring it, and well, how long have you been restoring it? And they'll, well, it's been going on 15 years now.
That's how long some of them take.
Yeah, maybe that's some of the gray area that I was just talking about, where I can translate. There's a perfect example of it, where I could translate that to the underwriter, and they're going to go ahead and write it. But typically they want to see an active restoration going on, so that can be verified with pictures. Helps out a lot. Any kind of restoration documents and details that you have that you can get you can email to me. That would also serve to verify an active restoration going on. And Hagerty, I mean, one of the things that I talked initially about, you asked me why I like Hagerty and why I do so much business with Hagerty when there are other classic car markets out there. And part of it is their product offering. I mean, they've got a lot of different products, and I want to talk about Cherish Salvage because it fit right into the claim that, is it Rick that he had? And I also want to talk about the restoration coverage. So they will put an endorsement on the policy, and it increases automatically the value of the.
Oh, you're saying?
Yeah, but it just locked up on me.
Okay, John, please.
Somebody's got to mute.
Yes. All right, go ahead, Steve. I'm sorry.
So they'll increase the value automatically 10% per quarter up to a maximum of $25,000. Now, if you needed more than that, you would just, call either Hagerty or your agent and say, hey, I've put in more than that this particular year. I would ask for justification. That would go to the underwriter, and then you'd get your value increase. But this is an automatic 10% per quarter. You don't have to do anything.
You have to ask for that, though. Is that correct?
You have to ask for it if your vehicle is under active restoration. Yes.
Okay. And how about for, let's say I had my car insured for $30,000 and the market's going up.
Yeah.
Does Hagerty increase my value automatically and send me a bill, or do I have to request it every time I want to?
That is basically your responsibility. You need to go onto this valuation tool. You need to keep your ear to the ground. Like in some cases, it's pretty obvious. Like, a lot of the Porsches from the 70s, those cars were going up from the 60s and 70s. They were going up dramatically, and Hagerty got proactive on those cars. They were able to go into their database, extract all of those types of vehicles, run valuation reports on those, and then communicate to clients, hey, your car has gone up by this amount, and this is the amount it would cost to increase the value. But that's not typically how they operate. It's a responsibility that rests with you guys. So the claim story, he got an F on his that.
I think it was Grundy that did it for me when I was in show with Grundy, but I think they all of a sudden I get an increased valuation that they did automatically every year. And I said, well, I don't want that. But they stuck it on the bill, and I had to call them up and say, no, I don't want to value that more than it is. But
well, again, Hagerty has made it easy. Literally, it will take you 5 minutes at most, if you don't get too distracted and spend 5 hours in there, going on their valuation guide and pulling down your car And you can look at it and say, and compare it, then dig out your policy, see what you have for value. Oh, gee, this thing went up. I'm going to call my agent or Hagerty directly and increase the value. It's very short money to increase the value on these things.
What if I have my car and it's fine, it's running, it's fully insured, and I get I decide I want a fancier paint job on it, or I want something done in a garage, and I send it to the garage, and the garage burns down. Am I going to be covered if they don't have garage insurance?
It depends.
Yeah.
That's why you never want to rely on somebody else's insurance. Like what our example was.
Mhm.
He got very, very lucky. In that example, they could have coverage. It's called garage keepers coverage.
Mhm.
And it covers the physical damage of vehicles in their care, custody, and control. So those are the vehicles that are being worked on, your car. But there's a level of liability that you either are responsible for or not. There's something called direct primary coverage for garage keepers. And now, if the owner had direct primary coverage and it burnt and the garage burnt down, so that means he wasn't negligent.
Mhm.
It just burnt down. That garage keepers would respond. There's another level of coverage that a garage owner can buy, which is less money. A lot of them buy it because it's less money, and it's called legal liability. So the garage owner has to be legally liable for the loss to your vehicle. In that fire, he wasn't legally liable for that. Guess what? His garage policy is not going to pay for that loss. You're going to have to go under your own policy. So you always want to set up your insurance the way you want to have it settled. You don't want to rely on somebody else's coverage.
Good. How about?
Can I add something on the restoration? If you're considering insurance on a car being restored, if you're doing the labor yourself, the insurance company may not pay you a value for your labor. They'll pay you in parts.
Not Hagerty.
Pardon me?
Not Hagerty. Hagerty will pay an owner to do the restoration. A lot of guys, especially when you have modified cars, I mean, most of those guys do their own mechanical and or body work, and they want to do it again after a loss. So Hagerty will pay you a very competitive hourly wage rate plus of course parts to
Okay, but
put your car back together.
I know there are some companies that will not. They only pay for the parts.
Most companies will not. Hagerty's the only one that I'm aware of that will allow the owner to restore their own car.
Yeah, I am somewhat.
And pay you to do it.
I'm somewhat knowledgeable of Hagerty. We are a Hagerty repair center. So I deal with them all the time.
Yeah.
They're great. You never have a problem.
I did not pay him to say this.
I will mention something else. The one loss I had since I've been insured with Hagerty was I had a windshield get shipped while I was driving down Route 495, and I called Hagerty and said, I've got this problem. I'd like to get my windshield fixed, and they asked me to get how much it was going to cost, and I said, well, I think a new windshield's, I forget what it was, $400. And they said, and how much to replace it? And I said, well, I'll replace it myself. I don't want to have somebody else mess with the car. I've done it before. It's not that hard. And they said, well, how long do you think it will take? And I said, I don't know, 4 hours maybe. And they, in addition to paying for the windshield, they gave me, I forget, $65, $70 an hour for the 4 hours. So I was very happy with that. I didn't expect it. And, I was surprised by that. I thought that was pretty good. And they cut me a check within less than a week. It was just lightning fast. I was very impressed by it.
Another great thing that Hagerty does is they they'll go out and source new old stock parts
I
after a
was gonna
loss.
mention that too, when Rob was talking about looking for parts.
Right, that's why I'm mentioning it.
Yeah, and I know that Hagerty will actually do parts location for you.
They love doing that stuff. They've got
bet.
guys, that's all they do. And the internet has made it so easy for them. Those guys, I've met those guys when I was on the agency advisory council for Hagerty for 2 years. And so I was out in their home office, and those guys were great. They just absolutely, I've never seen two people that love their job more than these guys.
So let me ask
It
you,
makes
does it make
people
you,
happy. It makes the owners real happy.
I bet. Because they don't have to go, if they get a loss, and especially if they're, a bunch of retired guys like us that don't have all the time in the world, if you get a business running or, you get a job, you can't take that time to track stuff down. So it's certainly a benefit. Let me ask you, does
One more thing,
Hagerty-
one more thing,
ahead.
before we leave this subject of claims. I just wanted to mention, Hagerty's got an endorsement, again, going back to their product offering. So, it's called Cherish Salvage, and I would have figured in on that loss. So for a small premium, it's, and I mentioned this especially with Austin guys, because most of you guys would probably want to keep your salvage. All right. And for 10% of the collision and comprehensive premium, you get a Cherish Salvage endorsement. You have a covered total loss. You get the agreed value, and you can keep the salvage, and they're not going to deduct 1 penny off that salvage value. So that's a huge
great.
endorsement for owners of cars like yours, where most of you guys would, in fact, want to keep the salvage.
Does it make any difference where I keep my car as far as getting
Yes.
to insure?
Ideally, they'd like to keep, they'd like the car garaged. But they've relaxed their underwriting requirements on that. So they do something now called driveway garaging. So if the car is sitting in the driveway, they will write it so long as it's 50,000 value or less, and it's not in a city or town that might have a higher theft exposure. Say a big city like Boston, as an example, they
Oh,
probably
like
wouldn't.
that one just to the west of you, about 10 miles away?
Yes, exactly. Yes, yep. The
We're
one
talking
beginning
about
with
Lawrence,
L.
Massachusetts.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. They don't want, they'd rather have the car sitting out in the driveway. If it's in a Quonset hut, they won't write it, because those things collapse under the weight of ice and snow, and they blow over in windstorms, and they cause more damage than if the car just had a cover on it and was in the driveway. They don't want public parking garages either. I'll run into people, oh yeah, it's parked in a garage. I said, is it a private garage? No, but it's, it's my apartment complex. No, they won't go for that.
How about having a different car? Do I have to have a second car to drive, or can this be my only car, or how does that work?
That is brand new in Massachusetts. I don't know if we have any other states on the line, but in Mass now, they will write standalone on any kind of vehicle, so long as there's some collector value to it. So they'll take a C7 Corvette and write that on a standalone, and right on down to your true classics. So they've opened up their offering substantially, and that was an approval by the Mass Division of Insurance recently that they allow that now.
Are there any restrictions on the number of miles I drive my classic car a year?
Oh, no, I'm glad we're going to talk about this, because that was another thing that I heard on that claim story. He got so lucky on that. Oh my goodness, what an incredible luck. other than the accident itself, everything else in that story was about good luck.
You're right.
It's unbelievable. Let's talk about usage, and included within that, of course, is the amount of miles. So that 5,000 miles, you won't see a mileage restriction anywhere on a Hagerty policy. And I mean, that's huge, really. Hagerty wants you to get out and drive the cars. They're all about driving. That's part of their branding, is they want you to drive the car. So, you know, when I'm out doing my car shows, if you came up to me and you said, "Hey, Stephen, I want you to look at this car," and I'll start asking you some nosy questions, because that's how the process works. And if you told me, I drive the car 7,500 miles a year, and I'll say, okay, well, that's a fair amount of miles. I said, but I want you to tell me how you drive those 7,500 miles a year. And he might say, well, you know, I drive the car on pleasure drives now. Remember that? Pleasure drives. I drive the car to car shows. I drive the car. The Austin-Healey Club has this unbelievable show every year down in Orlando. And I drive my car down there every year and take it off for a whole month. And there are thousands of Austins down there, and we have the greatest time. And I put about maybe 3,000, 4,000 miles on the car during that month-long trip, and then another 3,000 the remaining part of the year, including just pleasure driving. That one is going to be a go. That one's going to be a pass, because he's using the car. That trip down to Florida is consistent with club usage. Also consistent with Hagerty's underwriting rules is a pleasure drive. So you got to watch a lot of the companies, you know, the one that begins with a G that's a competitor. They are very, very strict on how you can use the car. And I got to tell you, most of the owners that have the policies that are underwritten by the G company have no idea about how restrictive the usage is. And it's so restrictive that basically, if you're using that car even to run an errand, let's say, and they always tell me, people always, "Oh, I never run an errand with my car." Oh, really? Okay, how about you're at the Cruise in the Tree at the North Shore Mall on Wednesday night, and then you decide, "Oh, gee, I've got to run into the Home Depot really quickly and pick something up." And that's when you go in and you come back out and the car is either stolen or it's been smashed in and it's a hit and run. A loss like that, Hagerty will pay it. The company that begins with a G absolutely will deny that, because that was a restricted usage at the time of a loss. You can't drive that car to work with the G company. With Hagerty, you can drive your car to work up to 50 times a year. They allow you to do that. So the usage on the cars, whoever you guys have insuring your car, you really need to wrap your arms around it, because you don't want to find out, oops, I was using the car in a restricted way when I had this loss. And I'm going to caution you about, you know, all of the companies allow you to take your cars, the G company, JC Taylor, American Modern, Safeco, they all allow you to take your car to and from a repair. So the answer that I'll get from somebody when I'm talking about the G company as an example, "Oh, well, I've got tools underneath my seat, and I'm always test driving the car." And my answer to that is, well, when you're involved in a claim situation, you're signing affidavits and you are perjuring yourself, which is a crime, And I can guarantee you that these adjusters, they pick that stuff up real quick because they know the nuances of handling claims, and they can tell when somebody's telling a big fat tale. So why would you even want to put yourself into a situation like that? Why don't you just rest your mind at ease and find a carrier that allows you to take the car in a much broader spectrum of usage? And that's what Hagerty does.
To add on to that a little bit, the other company that you mentioned, their advertisements, and I think we all know who they are, their advertisements talk about there are no mileage limitations. And that's true, as long as you are using it in the way that you're supposed to be using
That's
it.
correct.
So
Absolutely
they can
correct.
advertise that there's no mileage limitations, which is true. You can drive 1,000 miles to a car show, but if you take it outside the scope of that endorsement, you're still going to get hurt.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, oh, I can drive anywhere and do anything because there's no mileage limitations. But you really have to be, and that's, frankly, that's the one thing that you said a few years ago at our tech conference. And I said, I never realized that. That's why it's switched.
It's huge. It's a huge thing. Now, that being said, I mean, if in fact you only drive the car to and from car show events and repairs and parades and that kind of thing, and you are truly not using the car for any pleasure usage, driving to work, running errands, then that's not an issue then. But for most people, those things are going to sneak in there every once in a while. And you don't want to have to be sitting there worrying about whether the coverage is there.
Where would we find the Hagerty restrictions? Where do you find those?
There aren't any restrictions.
No, well, there are restrictions. So
Not for how you can use the vehicle. That would have to be on a usage endorsement. Hagerty does not have a usage endorsement that they attached to their policy. If you look at a Grundy policy, there is a usage endorsement. It's a separate piece of paper. It redefines how the vehicle may or may not be used.
So you can drive the car as many miles as you want, doing anything you want under a Hagerty.
Yes.
No limitation.
There's no limitation. There's
Well,
no
what if I-
limitation.
What if I drove
However,
like,
it's an honor system. First of all, if you came to me, I'm at a car show, I'm the frontline underwriter, and I'm asking you these questions, and it doesn't pass muster in my mind, I'm going to tell you, well, I'm going to say you're driving the car outside of what they deem to be acceptable.
Right.
And if you called Hagerty directly, they would say the same thing. But there's nothing in the policy itself that restricts that. There's nothing in the contract. This is an underwriting rule. It's different than what's in the contract itself.
well,
So you're
Stephen,
saying if I drive 1,000 miles a year commuting back and forth to work in my car.
That's a no-go. Every day you're driving to and from work?
Every day.
That's a no-go. That's not going to go.
You're not going to underwrite me, but once you have underwritten me and I have an accident, am I covered?
You would be, but then they'd cancel the policy.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. It's an honor system. You're on an honor system with them.
I'm just trying to figure out what I'm committing to. That's where do
you're in, things change. People's usage changes all the time. It's very normal. And some of them leak through, some of them don't. I mean, but the question you just asked me, could they hang a denial on that? No, they couldn't. Unless they went back and you fraudulently answered the question on an application.
I'm just trying to understand, if there's an honor system, what am I being held to the honor system? What are the criteria that they consider to be within the honor system?
They want you to use the car. You will not find in the policy. I'm always going to refer back to the policy because the policy is the document, is the contract that determines coverage. You're not going to see anywhere in the policy that you can only drive that car X amount of miles a year. You're not going to see anywhere in the policy that says you if you're running an errand, the policy will not respond. You won't see anything like that. That's in a separate usage endorsement, And Hagerty does not have an equivalent usage endorsement.
All right, Stephen, and it's been a while since I've completed an application, but does the application for Hagerty Insurance anywhere say that I will only use this car for pleasure, blah, 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 and not for commuting or,
No,
no?
no, because that's not prohibited usage.
Okay, now, Rick, to change this up a little bit,
Rick, there's one possibility. If you have antique plates on the car,
I was gonna ask that next. In
you're
Massachusetts,
you're
as
restricted that way.
you're familiar,
That's a very good question, and in fact, it does restrict the usage. It restricts the usage on how you can use the car. It doesn't restrict the policy. So the antique plate rules in any state in the country, typically they restrict how the car can be used. You can use the car to drive to and from a repair. You can use the car to drive to and from a car show. You can use the car to drive to and from a parade event. And I think probably on Sundays as well. And that's it. There's no general transportation. There's no running an errand. There's no pleasure drive on Wednesday night, driving up to Rockport because it's a nice night. So it's the plate that's being restricted, and you're subject to being pulled over and issued a citation by law enforcement. Nothing in the policy is restricting that. So when you put an antique plate on your car, and I understand why people put antique plates on their car, I think they're great. But by putting that plate on the car, you've restricted the usage of the car more than the policy. The policy could care less what kind of plate's on there. The policy is.
let me ask you, if you've registered your car as an antique in Massachusetts and have antique plates on it, as you said, you restricted the registration to that vehicle.
The use of it.
You're right. And if you were to be involved in an accident, so let's say you were going off for ice cream sundaes instead of doing what you're supposed to be doing, an antique plate.
Yep.
Could your insurance company come back and say, well, you obtained your registration unlawfully, or you weren't in the terms of the registration and failed to pay out?
Absolutely not.
Oh, okay.
And Hagerty could care less that you have an antique plate on there. They're not concerned about that at all.
Uh-huh.
They just want to know what were you using the car for? I was taking a pleasure drive, and we stopped to run an errand, and then I went to get ice cream, and that's where we had the loss. Yep, fine, no problem. That's it.
So the
And they don't even know the
restriction is
registration, do they,
basically
Steve?
No.
They only know the VIN,
What was that?
right? Hagerty knows the VIN. They don't know the registration, do they?
No, they don't know the registration.
Right.
Yep.
So whether it's an antique plate or
They
a
could.
vanity
They
plate or a
don't
stamp
care.
plate, they don't know.
They don't care. Now, in
Right.
that same incident that I just mentioned, the cop that was there at the scene of the accident, he might give you a ticket because you used the antique plate outside of the normal rules, but the insurance would still be valid.
So
Okay,
you
so let's-
suggesting that once the insurance is written, there is no circumstance under which Hagerty will not pay a claim based on usage?
Oh, I hate to use that. Well, I mean, outside of like a fraudulent type of situation, I mean, if there was fraud involved, they wouldn't. If they could prove that there was fraud involved in procuring the insurance policy. But outside of that,
Okay.
I mean, if there was an exclusion in the policy for something, then sure. I mean, there's going to be it's not going to be covered. Not all losses are covered, but for usage, no, there isn't going to be any.
Well,
Because
Steve,
there isn't any.
Yeah,
Steve,
I've got my policy here in front of me, and there's a highlight summary page, and it says flexible. A highlight with Hagerty is flexible usage. Quote, our custom design policy doesn't restrict usage to just parades and car shows. We encourage you to drive your classic just for the fun of it.
Yeah,
So the restriction,
major deal.
the restriction with the plate year of manufacture is a state restriction. It has nothing
Yes.
to do with insurance.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is absolutely correct.
All right, well, to move on,
Stephen, I have on my policy, I have the words guaranteed value. You haven't said anything about guaranteed value. What does that mean?
Guaranteed value is usually it's a trademark phrase. It's called a guaranteed value, and Hagerty has trademarked that guaranteed value term, and I think 49 states. They can't use it in Massachusetts. It's
Well, I've got a Massachusetts,
is it Hagerty?
yeah,
Yep, me too.
What does it say on there now?
it's guaranteed value.
Guaranteed value? Well, maybe they got approval recently to use that terminology. It's the same thing as agreed amount. It means that you agree upfront with the company, the value of the car, and in the event of a covered total loss, you get the value less a deductible if you choose one, but it is a non-depreciated loss settlement.
I'm really surprised because the value on my policy is significantly worth more than what the car is worth.
don't tell him that.
And why
Take it and run.
is that? Why would you even want to pay premium on that? You're paying more premium for
One of the
that.
reasons I brought it up.
You don't pay much more. That's the problem.
I find most people want to insure the car for the fair market value of the car. I mean, they don't want to overinsure it. They don't want to underinsure it. That's my typical owner. Sometimes people put a lot of money into them. But most of the time I get involved with that stuff. It's on modified vehicles, and it's like, I got to tell them, you're just not the company will not write that value on that car. I mean, I'm sorry that, you think it's worth 150,000, the most they'll do is 80,000. And
After the last call, when Rob talked about the accident he had, it triggered me to think about the value on my BN1 since I bought it and insured it with Hagerty back in 2010. And I've pretty much gone through the whole car. So it's got to be worth more because I sure spent a lot of money doing all that stuff. But I also look at eBay and Hemmings and Bring a Trailer, weekly. And I keep a spreadsheet on some of that over the years. So I knew my car was worth more than what I was having it insured for. So I used the evaluation tool, and that confirmed what my thoughts were from looking at all these websites when I got nothing else to do. And so I called Hagerty, and it was very easy, and took about 5 minutes, and I added $20,000 of insurance to my policy, and it only cost me $100 a year.
Yep,
I thought that's a good deal, and it says guaranteed value, just what I asked for, guaranteed. So
that's a good story.
Yeah, it's pretty cheap insurance, 20 grand.
I have a question for the fellow that got in the accident. Is it Rob?
Yes.
Rob, yes.
You used the term you took from the insurance company of the fellow that ran into you. Did you have any assistance with that? Did you have an attorney to go? Because it seems to me you got a pretty nice company to work with that gave you to me a surprising value for your car. Were you handling that yourself?
It's the adjuster that I dealt with. He was the one that came up with the dollar amount. I did not have an attorney. I talked to him again a number of times. He said he did his due diligence, that he was agonizing over what the car was worth. He did get the 3 different quotes. He said he had sticky notes all over his office desk to say, what some of the values of some of the different parts were. I was very lucky, absolutely, that I got the number that I did, and especially that I wasn't injured. But it was the loss of the car, and I felt real bad about it, but I know I couldn't have rebuilt it for $28,000.
Well, it's lucky he hit you. If you'd hit him and been at fault, you would have gotten only paid the 18 grand.
Yeah. Well, he's also lucky that it wasn't a hit and run. Then I mean, you got so lucky on that. It's mind-boggling.
All right, let's hold off our questions until the end of, let's get through Steve here, and some of those questions might be answered, and then we'll have time for some question and answer after that. Steve, if I get an accident, what's the process? And can I pick my repair shop, or how does this work?
Yep, you can pick your own repair garage. You know, typically people with classic cars want to go to a shop that specializes in restoring their vehicle. So it's not a typical production shop for regular cars. You know, the current labor rate for those shops are $35, $40, $45 an hour. Restoration shops go north of $100 an hour. Hagerty says, have at it. You won't get any pushback on that. It's absolute body shop of your choice. And another thing about Hagerty, I mean, it's all about the claim, really. I want everybody that's listening in tonight, just forget about the premium part. The premiums are so small as it is. I mean, if one company is $50 or $75 higher than the other, that's not really what you should be focusing on. You should be focusing on the claims expertise that you're going to get. And, you know, adjusters who work almost exclusively with daily use vehicles, they don't understand the unique aspects of fixing classic cars. They just don't. Like the guy that came to see Rob's car, he was good with Corvettes. Well, that isn't going to help you with your Austin, is it? Probably not. The guys at Hagerty, they have to do 80 hours of training every single year, not in their lifetime. Every year they have to train 80 hours. They have their own labs. I've seen them, their own garages. They call them labs. They pull cars apart and look at them. And it's really fascinating watching this stuff. And that you're not going to stump those guys. I mean, they know that parts have to, you know, a lot of times parts have to be fabricated. They get it. They understand that we're not going to try to get some aftermarket part. We're going to fabricate this part for this guy. That's the kind of stuff you want to hear. They get it done right the first time, and they are extremely fair. I attend car shows, about 50 car shows a year. I've been doing them for a lot of years. I love it when people come up and tell me their Hagerty claim story. And I'm telling you, it's running probably like 95% are good stories, 95% are great stories, 5% are good stories. I don't think I've ever had somebody come up to me and say, Hagerty didn't know what the hell they were doing on this claim. That's just not how they've built their whole value system on claims, from McKeel Hagerty all the way down. And I've seen it in action. You know, you got a modified vehicle with a paralyzed paint job on somebody runs a key down the side, they're going to repaint that entire vehicle. They're not going to mess around with trying to blend it in. A regular company's not going to do that. They just won't. I mean, I do a lot of regular auto insurance. I've got all the regular carriers. They're good companies, but they just don't have the patience to handle claims like these specialty carriers do, and in particular, Hagerty.
Steve, Lindbach here in Connecticut. I had a problem with my 65 Austin-Healey, basically on my own problem. I backed into something and I called up Hagerty, and they said have it checked out. So I've got a custom garage here in town who does beautiful work. And they said, can he write up a estimate? I said, yes. So they wrote up an estimate, paid exactly what it was. Nothing, that was that simple. I couldn't believe it. They did a great job.
Yeah, these are the stories I hear at car shows all the time. And that's why I say, don't focus in on the $50 that you might save doing this or that. You need to focus in on the rubber that hits the road, and that's the claim. Because the $50 you save, you'll forget about that right fast.
Does anyone else have any questions for Steve?
Yeah, I have a question for Steve. This is Bob Britton. So Steve, a lot of car clubs, they have performance events and sometimes called gymkhanas. Some of them called funkanas. And, you know, we race around a parking lot in a timed event. I was wondering what the, you know, Hagerty's, you know, insurance claim if someone damaged their cars during a club-sponsored speed event.
You mean like if they ran over a curb or something like that?
Absolutely.
This talks
Or
about
worse.
that whole subject.
Or injured somebody.
This is the motorsports enthusiasts have an on-track mind. Here's how you can protect their passion. Customize coverage through Hagerty to how enthusiasts use their raced cars and motorcycles. So they have limited paddock and trailer coverage. They got liability coverage, comp and collision for street legal vehicles that are we offer full protection for street legal race vehicles when they're off the track. We also protect trailers used to haul race vehicles. On track coverage, we offer both single event and annual track insurance to enthusiasts who participate in high performance driver education and non-competition track days. So they do get involved with some of this stuff. You just need to have the right endorsements on here.
So does that endorsement cost extra?
Yes.
Yes.
Of course it does.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, but, you know, I mean, this is not rate. I mean, this is not on track stuff. This is, as I said, this is in a parking lot, you know, driving around cones.
I can comment on this really quickly. And Peter, you've been part of this because we belong to the national organization, the Austin-Healey Club of America. Bob, it was in that insurance update that came out recently from the delegates meeting, is that yes, per event, there is a cost, a stipend involved that the national will pay if you're going to a conclave event, but that same per event stipend is available to the regional meets like a summit meet, or even if you wanted to do something on your own, a gymkhana or a slalom event, that same rate is available through national. They've got a policy in place that I think it's $180 per event that will cover those kinds of costs.
But I'm not sure it covers your car, Steve.
Yeah.
It covers it.
Well, it's good to see you're well. And back.
Thank you.
Form.
Yeah, Peter, that's why I say, Peter, I'm not sure where that coverage goes, but if it's not covering the car, then I'm not sure what it's covering.
It's
Right,
covering the people that put on the event. It's if somebody were to put on a gymkhana and some little kid in a baby carriage gets pushed out in the middle of the carriage and gets run over by somebody running the event, and somebody decides to sue the Austin-Healey Club and sue the directors and the organizers, it covers those people.
Okay.
It doesn't cover the individual competitor. It doesn't cover damage to their car. It doesn't cover. Now, the real question is going to be, is that person that is competing, let's say the same thing happens, they hit somebody in the baby carriage, I suspect that they're not going to be covered by their Hagerty insurance, because there is a condition in the insurance policy.
Yeah, I agree.
For performance events.
No racing. But I think to answer your question, Bob, I'm looking at this material in my underwriting file. I think that they would define what you were describing to me as a non-competitive track day is how they would fit it into that definition, and they would allow that if you have this endorsement on the policy for liability.
What may happen, if you look at those carefully, Stephen, is that a lot of times they differentiate between a timed event and a non-timed event.
Yeah.
That's how they determine what is a non-competitive.
Yeah.
If you're on a track day, you're not getting timed, and that's why a lot of track days say you can't bring a time, you're not going to get timed, as opposed to some of these gymkhanas, et cetera, they usually get timed. So there's a little bit, I'm not giving anybody insurance information.
Yep. I'm going to dig into that a little deeper.
Yeah, I think you may find that you may not be covered. You might think you're covered,
Yeah.
But, and, you know, the worst thing is you quote self-insured, which is all well and good if all, you know, you're taking the risk with your car and that's all you care about. If something breaks, you'll fix it.
Yeah.
However, if something bad happens and you run over the kid in the baby carriage and it's millions of dollars, that's when it gets to be difficult.
I think what they mean by a non-competition track day is, you know, you're out on a track and you're running your car, but it's not an actual race.
Yeah, and they don't time them. You'll see that a lot
That's
of track
right.
days, we don't time them and we don't allow you to bring a time.
That's right. You go out and have at it and drive as fast as you want around this track, but we're not timing it.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think that's what they're driving at here. And if you're doing something like that, yeah, Hagerty has a liability market for that, and the physical damage, the paddock coverage as well.
That's right. You pay, if you want to do that and be covered, the same way as if you're going to race your car on a racetrack, you can get covered and you're going to pay a big premium to do that. And
Well, but let's get back to Bob's question. It was really around gymkhanas in a parking lot timed around cones. That's the crux of what Bob's question was.
I would say that is not a covered event. If it's a timed event.
They are.
Again, I would want to have a conversation with my underwriter about that, and I'm going to, because it's worth a conversation to find out if they're going to fit what you described to me into what they're saying is a non-competition track day. They might say, yeah, that's a non-competition track day. I don't know. I don't know the answer.
That'd be good to know.
Yeah,
We
I'll get
appreciate
back
that.
to you on it. Yeah.
That's great.
Peter, may I suggest you send the video of you running that gymkhana to Steve for him to
That'd be
pass
great.
along to his underwriters?
Yeah, I would like, if you can do that, I would like to have that, and I absolutely will forward that to my underwriter and say.
I think this is important information for a lot of us that, you know, when we do have these get-togethers, a lot of us do participate in these gymkhanas, and I particularly could have very seriously damaged my car a couple years ago when I ran over a curb trying to go too fast. Luckily, it did not damage the car. I didn't get any frame damage. I just got some paint scrapes, but it could have turned out to be a disaster, both for the car and, you know, I could have done a lot more damage too.
Oh, you could have been physically hurt yourself too, and that's
or I could have hit somebody too, because it was
exactly.
there were people up on the bank,
Yeah.
not too far from where I hit.
Exactly.
So it is kind of an awakening.
Any other questions for Stephen?
Yeah. I got one about towing. If you break down somewhere and you have to get towed.
Hagerty has towing coverage.
Oh yeah, let me just spend a couple minutes on that. It's called Hagerty Driver Club, and I just want to make sure I'm giving you the right information on it. They've got have you all seen the really cool magazine, the Hagerty magazine? If you're a Hagerty client,
I got it.
Some of you are saying yes, so you're already in the driver club. So chances are you have one of three levels of coverage. They've got first, second, and third gear. The first gear is $45. It's unlimited emergency flatbed towing, 15 mile per event. Second gear is $70, unlimited emergency flatbed towing, 60 miles per event. And the third gear is $175. It's unlimited emergency flatbed towing. It's 150 miles per event. And that's for any car that you own. So it's not just your classic car. If you have three other cars, they all have that same benefit of 150 mile flatbed tow.
I used it coming back from Virginia a couple of years ago. Worked out really well.
It's guaranteed flatbed towing, and the people that they contract with have special training in towing and getting classic and antique cars up on those ramps. And I've never heard of any issues with that. I've only heard good stories. And again, I want to repeat, on the highest level of coverage, if you have 5 cars in your household and you have AAA, you can get rid of AAA. You don't need it. You got 150 miles of guaranteed flatbed towing for every single car that you have. That's a
Sign me
good,
up.
that's a good deal if you have a lot of cars. And you get a
Who
really
wants to
cool
break down
magazine.
what?
And you get a cool magazine too. The magazine's great. They've just revamped it. It's beefier. It's got more articles. It's just a fun magazine to thumb through. They just did an article about the 8 generations of Corvettes. It was a historical piece. It was just a great, if you're into Corvettes, I like Corvettes. It was just a really fascinating piece of journalism with some really great pictures.
Steve, you pay for that insurance per car, right?
Pay what insurance?
If you have 5 cars and you're trying to get towing insurance, you pay.
No,
No. It's one
just one.
fee. One $175 fee. That's it.
Okay, wow.
And it applies, that benefit is for every car you own.
Wow.
And
It's
how
a
many
great
times
deal.
and is that more than once a year?
It's unlimited on that. Hang on, I'm almost positive that it is an unlimited benefit. It can happen 10 times in a year on the same car.
Because AAA gives you only 3, I think.
That's correct. Yeah, no, this is unlimited. It is unlimited.
With some of our cars, we need it unlimited.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Stephen?
Yes, Steve, I have two quick questions. If I'm in an accident and the other party is at fault, does Hagerty pay me and then go after the other guy, or do I have to deal with the party at fault?
Well, you can go either way, but I always recommend going first party against your own company. You collect, you give up the subrogation rights, and then they're going to go after the at-fault parties.
Okay.
So there's no adversarial relationship. You're dealing with your own company. Most of these policies are written without any deductible. If you have a deductible, you're going to have to wait to get the deductible back when Hagerty recoups after they've subrogated against the at-fault insurance company. But most of the policies we write without any deductible because the premium savings is so small.
Okay, the second question is, can I let somebody else, a friend, drive my car, or does
Yes.
it limit me?
That's a good question. Thank you for asking. Yes, so long as it's permissive use. And that's another thing about Hagerty, by the way. A lot of these carriers, you run into some youthful operators. They're not the owners. They're the sons of or daughters of the owners. And with a lot of companies, that's a big no-no. They can't even get in. They can't get in at all, even if mom and dad are in the car with them. Hagerty allows that. So that's another nice feature for Hagerty is as long as that person has a good driving record. I mean, if he's got 2 or 3 accidents, no, that's not going to happen. But if he's got a clean driving record and he's 16 or 17 and mom and dad are in the car with him, he can go ahead and drive it.
Could I let a friend drive my car if I would not with him?
Yeah, so long as you allowed him to do it.
Okay.
Yep. And I mentioned that thing about the young drivers. I mean, if you go around to the car shows and you look around, the average age of the car owner, it's starting to creep up there a bit. And, we want to keep this hobby going. And that's why I'm big on the modern classics. A lot of the younger folks, when I'm out there now, I'm seeing them starting to show up at the car shows, and they've got their cars that, I mean, I'm not particularly keen on some of them, but I'm just happy that they're there, to keep the hobby going. And, they like different things. Well, we did too. So I'm happy to see it. So Hagerty is really making a big push for modern classic vehicles. They know that's the future of the hobby, and they're right on it. So that's a good thing for all of us to keep this thing going, because we have a lot of fun with it.
Any other questions?
What is this spare parts on the policy, $750?
It's just an additional amount of coverage that is included. So if you have, some fenders hanging around, some rims hanging around, everybody's got some spare parts hanging around.
I see.
They give you an additional amount of coverage because it wouldn't be covered under your homeowner policy.
I get you.
Or you'd at least have some pushback on a homeowner policy. They might cover it if it's just sitting there in storage, but you're better off insuring it on the auto policy where there'd be absolutely no pushback whatsoever. And it's covered on a replacement cost basis. They're not going to depreciate it.
On the insurance value on the car, the total we're talking about, if your car is worth, say, $60,000 and you have an accident and you love that car to death and you don't care, you want it fixed, you would be able to have it fixed up to the $80,000 that your policy covers.
Well, at some point, the company, I mean, they probably declare like a constructive total loss. So that means that the cost to repair it is going to be a certain percentage of a certain high percentage of the value of the vehicle. So in your example, is it insured for $80,000?
Yes.
And
when I heard the example a couple of weeks ago of him having the accident with his car,
yeah,
it was going to cost, I believe the number came up to over $100,000 to really restore this car.
Yeah.
But you know, if you really wanted that particular car, you wanted to keep your own car, might be worth it to you to have that done.
Mm-hmm. Well, the company, they're never going to pay more than the agreed value.
Yes.
And a lot of times, every state has different regulations regarding what is defined as a constructive total loss. And it's a certain percentage of the value of the vehicle. Could be 75% or 80%. And once it hits that number, then they declare a constructive total loss. And a lot of it has to do with the safety of the vehicles because the frames get bent and any number of other things go wrong with the cars, and they become a safety issue to have them back out on the road. So they prefer to have a way to get them off the road, and that's how they do it. That's how they kind of regulate it. But they're never going to pay more than that $80,000 on under any circumstances. Are they going to? I mean, if it's going up to like $75,000 or $75,000, they're going to declare a constructive total loss, because it's within 75% of that number of the $80,000, and they're going to give you the $80,000.
Well, you would get the $80,000.
Yes, you'd get the $80,000. Yeah, they're not. They can't give you the constructive total. They're going to give you the agreed value on the contract.
And then it would be up to you to do whatever you want to do.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And if you have the Cherish salvage endorsement, then you could keep the salvage. It's not going to cost you anything. They tow it to your house and you have at it and start restoring on another vehicle.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Would that be a salvage title?
What was that?
Would that be a salvage title?
Yes.
Anyone else?
Yes, I've got one. This is Rob Dexter.
The lucky guy.
My claim settlement, I had an actual cash value for the car, and then they added sales tax. What does that sale tax mean? It was like $2,973.07.
Wow.
So is that based on what the cash value was? And is that something I'm actually going to have to pay tax on later because it was?
Now you're kind of getting into things that I'm not too sure about, because I think that could be state specific. But the sales tax, I mean, I believe that's because you'd have to go out and get a new car at that value, and they're assuming that is the taxable amount on a car of equivalent value that you'd have to go to replace.
Oh,
is that equal to the state of Connecticut's sales tax, Rob?
Yeah, I guess so. I never really calculated out the number.
It's $29.52.
Yep.
It probably is.
So Lenny knows it. Good job, Len.
You got a sweet loss settlement out of that, I'm telling you. I'll have to remember that story.
Speaking of stories, you got any other good stories for us that came up in your career?
Who, me?
You.
Just the claim stories. I mean, I've kind of touched on them before. I mean, I really enjoy, the owners of the cars and talking about cars, and I really love it when I hear a good claim story, because you guys are so passionate about your cars. I mean, you're almost like an extension of, you're almost like a kid.
Got any funny claim stories?
No, not really. I thought the one I heard tonight was about the funniest. That was a great story. That was just a perfect story. It really was.
You can use that now in all your sales pitches.
Well, I don't know if I finished the question, since this is my time to have a little bit of salesmanship. There is no difference in premium if you use a local independent agent or if you use Hagerty Direct.
Steve, how do we contact you?
There's no difference in premium. My agency is georgetowninsurance.com. That's where you can find us. Again, georgetowninsurance.com. My telephone number, 978-352-8000. Again, 978-352-8000. And when you call my office, anybody that you speak with in my office speaks fluent classic car. They're all as trained as I am. We've been doing this a long time. We're really good at it. And we just love helping people out.
And we'll put a link up on the website, Peter, to the agency. So it'll be on our club website.
So Stephen, can you cover cars outside of Massachusetts?
I do New Hampshire and Mass and Rhode Island.
Okay.
Not Connecticut.
Is there anybody in Maine that you know of?
Most agents, independent agents, write a little bit with Hagerty, so nobody specifically comes to mind. I've got a colleague that I work with, Jim Foy, Foy. I believe they've got a lot of agencies in New Hampshire, Mass, and I think they're in Maine too. So you might want to try Foy Insurance. And I know they deal in Hagerty.
All right. If there's no more questions, I want to thank you very much, Stephen, for taking all this time for us. And we really
it's been a pleasure. It's been really fun.
Too. I think a lot of people learned a lot of things, and some of them were a little scary, and they're going to go open up their policy as soon as they get off the call.
Yes, it's that reluctance to open up. And I hope none of you are still insuring with a regular auto insurance company. I mean, no knock against, the Mafrays and the Safeties and Plymouth Rocks. They're great companies. I underwrite for all those companies. I write a lot of insurance with them, but they're not where your classic car should be, both from a valuation standpoint and a claim standpoint. They just don't have the patience to handle a claim on your car, and they're going to mess it up.
All right, all. One more thing I want to add is Saturday night is the Austin-Healey Club of New England Zoom holiday party. There's still plenty of room in the Zoom chat room for this, and we will be exchanging gifts. We will do the Yankee swap, and all that is being paid for by your dues. We're giving out, swapping gift certificates to places like Norris Motors and various other places.
Hagerty Insurance?
No, we don't have Hagerty Insurance. I can't afford the premiums. And
Georgetown Insurance for that.
Georgetown Insurance.
Oh, geez.
And
one last question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. When I took out my insurance when I first bought the car, I have an umbrella policy that covers my liability on my house, boat, cars, whatever. And they was with USAA, which I think is a pretty good company.
They are
reluctant to work with Hagerty. And I had to fight like the dickens to go with Hagerty. And they wanted to put me off on some other classic car insurance company that I just couldn't work with. They were not good on the phone or anything else. And then I got into the trouble with Hagerty, that Hagerty at that time, or I'm not sure what their limits are, with your umbrella policy, you have to have certain limits before the umbrella policy will cover it.
Correct.
I had quite a bit of trouble with that. Any comment on that?
No, I don't know why. I mean, the underlying paper that, Hagerty's a managing general agent. They're not the actual insurance company. The actual insurer is called Essentia, and they are A-rated by AM Best. So that would be the only issue that I could think of where a primary carrier would not want to, if USAA was writing the umbrella, the primary carrier they would want as an A-rated carrier, and Essentia is an A-rated carrier. So I don't know. I can't speak to what their problem was with that.
Thank you.
Okay, to finish up, the Christmas holiday party is Saturday night. I will be sending out a updated email tomorrow to tell you all about the how to get in on a Zoom call, and David Townsend will be offering a $150 gift certificate for the participants in the Zoom meeting that will be swapped around. So if you want to get a nice Christmas present for yourself or someone else, it would be a good idea to join the party. And I hope to see you all there, because I understand Santa Claus is going to be making an appearance. And I've got it on good authority. I want to thank you all for taking the time to come in tonight, and Stephen, most of all.
Thank you for inviting me, Rick.
Oh, it's been great, believe me.
Well done.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Steve.
You're very welcome. Good night, guys. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Happy holidays to you.
Thank you.
Good night, job.
Bye-bye.
Right.